But before we begin, I want to tell you about CURE and why we put on this event. Epilepsy affects over 3 million Americans and over 50 million people worldwide of all ages. If we were to apply this statistic to the audience, 3 audience members would have epilepsy. It may not seem like a huge deal, but think of it on a global scale. Some can control their epilepsy with medication, but many cannot. Both kinds are incurable. Epilepsy research is severely underfunded, and yet its burden today in today's society is equivalent to lung cancer in men and breast cancer in women. I also want to let you know that there's a more personal reason why we put on this event. At the beginning of my sophomore year, after a debilitating brain infection, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. Fortunately, I am one of those lucky ones that can control it with medication. As one of my friends with epilepsy jokingly said, I may have epilepsy, but epilepsy does not have me. And all kidding aside, she's completely right. I am one of the lucky ones. I can stand up in front of the crowd and not worry about seizing on the floor. I can talk, dress myself when I get up in the morning, and have dreams of going to college and getting a job. So tonight, it's our duty together to raise money to find a cure so that everyday people afflicted by this disease can live the lives they were meant to live and fulfill their dreams, just like you and I. So now I'd like to show you a short video just talking about what CURE does, and hopefully it's informative and very moving.
My son Peyton is 7 years old, and he has epilepsy, cerebral palsy, and what they call global developmental delay due to not getting enough oxygen when he was born. Immediately, they said he had a seizure within minutes, if not seconds, of being born. Oh, it's tight. Let's loosen it a little bit. Let's loosen it. I just don't think you can function and develop normally cognitively when you have all this abnormal activity in the brain.
Biggest frustration is that when you think you've made a milestone, like for example, we went through almost 11 months without having a seizure, so you kind of get, not cocky, but get comfortable, and then I declare blue, bam, here's a seizure.
I just think it's sad that there hasn't been a lot of change in how they treat the disorder. I mean, it's just medications and cross your fingers. If you're not lucky, you know, you're rolling the dice.
I was walking with my daughter and she was riding her bike in front and my son Ellen was in the stroller, and I started hearing these quick inhalations, very deep guttural sounds, and his eyes were rolling back in his head and his arms and legs were flying up in the air. To just sit there and watch your son seize and not have any way to make it stop is very difficult.
There's no guidebook. You're constantly guessing as to what's going to be the right thing to do. The experts don't always agree. And you put your kid on a drug and it turns him into a zombie and you have to go get off of it and try the next one.
We have the residual from the epilepsy, not only the physical delays, but then also cognitive delays. And we have speech delays. And some of that is related to the epilepsy, some of that is related to autism. So it's hard to tell what came first, the chicken or the egg. Whether it was the seizures, I don't know that we'll ever know.
On October 23rd, 2008, I was at work where I'm a pediatrician, and out of the blue, I had a stroke from a ruptured blood vessel in my head. And while I was at the rehab hospital, I actually had a seizure. It was pretty scary experience, even as a pediatrician. Like I knew it was a seizure.
That's something that they can't predict. You know, even being on the anti-seizure medication, hopefully that'll keep it under control, but at any point, you know, even years from now, he could still have a seizure. So that's the scary part.
During residency, I had my first insight as to the dangers of seizure, because actually one of our colleagues actually died while on call during a seizure. And up until that point, I'd always been told that no one ever died of a seizure.
Unless you have a family member, close person that you know that has a seizure disorder, it's a hard diagnosis to understand, and it's a scary thing to witness, which I think makes people fear it.
It's totally changed my perspective on seizures. It's really hard to tell a family not to worry about a seizure. You know, even a fever seizure that kids get all the time.
I walked up the stairs in the auditorium and I felt my left leg becoming weak, and I didn't know why I was doing that, and couldn't stop myself from doing that. And I walked all the way up to the top of the auditorium, and then I felt my head turning to the left in a forced manner, and that seizure basically revealed that I had a benign tumor. It made a significant impact on my life as an epileptologist. I was able to understand many things that often patients would say to me in my own person.
My brother David was diagnosed with a glioblastoma. It's the most aggressive form of a brain tumor. Part of the pattern of brain tumors is that seizures are a given. David lived 9 months, and he endured 3 different surgeries, rounds of chemo, rounds of radiation. And throughout all of it, he never really complained, but what he lived in fear of was the next seizure. They were devastating to him. This one time, after a particularly violent seizure, he looked at me and said, "Don't feel sorry for me. I'm the lucky one. I lived 33 years without ever having a seizure. There are some people that have them every day. There are people that have hundreds every day. And when I learned about CURE and the work that they were doing, I thought, no, this is something I can do in his memory to support their work, which is that basic science, that basic research that is so critical to finding a cure."
Many, many people thought epilepsy was a thing of the past. Well, it really isn't today. People are being affected by it all the time. Look at the brain injuries from our veterans over in Iraq. It's causing its toll.
Brain trauma is a very frequent cause of epilepsy, and often of severe form of epilepsy. We're seeing more and more of this form of epilepsy in our veterans that are coming back from the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq.
The future for epilepsy really lies in research. And that's why CURE came about, was strictly for research, and every penny they made was spent on it. Hopefully someday find a cure.
And as somebody who's had a seizure, I want to know that there is a treatment that is going to cure it with 100% certainty, because in the mind of patients, 90% is not good enough. Unfortunately, the amount of dollars for epilepsy research relative to the severity of the disease and the impact that this disease has on the society is not proportional.
I really hope that we can get to a point where we can find not just a Band-Aid, but find a solution, find what causes these seizures, what triggers it, and then try to find a solution for it.
To me, finding a cure is everything. I don't think there's a choice. No kid deserves to go through this. He deserves to be running in the yard and getting in fights with his brother and sister and getting in trouble and going to college and doing all the things that you should be able to do.